Welcome to the Friendly Frequencies podcast. Another episode to you today from the Philippines. I'm here in Siargao on a wavy beach, and it's going to be a little bit loud, but I think that a lot of you actually enjoy the sounds of the waves during my videos, so I'm pushing it with this one. Let's see how it goes. So thank you for joining me again, and I want to talk to you about something that has shown up in almost every area of my life lately, and I've really come to learn the importance of taking responsibility for my life. So what this episode is really about is that your success is inevitable when you take full responsibility for everything in your life. I want to dive right into the subject, and my intention behind this is to give you a sense of empowerment with this sentence. It's not a blaming game, it's not a shaming game or any of that. It's actually a sense of empowerment to realize that you have full control over your life. You have full control over not what happens to you, but how you respond to it. It's exciting. So we're going to get excited in this episode because as soon as you realize that you're responsible for everything in your life, you realize that you're responsible for your happiness, your success, your resilience, and really this is what resilience is. It's taking what happens to you, in quote, and letting it be something that happens for you. Because I believe that everything happens for us as long as we believe that it's happening for us. And that for me, it's an inner knowing, actually. It's not just a belief. It's a knowing. I know that everything is happening for me, in my favor. And therefore, the world responds to me in a way that is favorable. And even when something doesn't seem to be favorable in the moment, I have that internal knowing, that trust that everything is working out in my favor. And this is along the same lines of taking responsibility, but this is just the importance. I'm placing such importance on taking responsibility in this episode. Because as soon as you start to shift from being a victim in your life to seeing yourself as the creator of your life, that's when the whole world will respond to you in such a different way. And I'm excited to see what happens for you when you do that. So I'm going to give you a few examples of my own life and to give you just a deeper understanding. And I'm also, at the end of the episode, I'm going to give you some tips around how to notice. I'm just going to point out a few things that you can just look out for in your everyday life. Because, I like to give you some sort of assignment by the end. Usually it's a journal prompt, but this time it's going to be just a notice moment. So just notice when these things come up, how are you responding and how are you taking responsibility for it? And again, it just takes practice and self-awareness to become really good at that. So I just want to clarify, okay, again, taking responsibility does not mean that it is your fault what happens, okay? So this is why I'm able to actually make it so that I can actually make the bold statement that even your traumas are your responsibility. And the first time I was told that, because I was, this isn't necessarily my words, this is something that I heard from somebody else who was speaking to me directly. And at first I thought, what the hell? And and that's definitely a triggering statement that to say to somebody who really is a victim of trauma, that is their responsibility. Now, that's why I want to make it clear that it's not anybody's fault. It's not my fault what's happened to me. It's not your fault what's happened to me, or the person who inflicted this pain onto me. It's not their fault either, actually. It's nobody's fault. And the blame is actually irrelevant, and it does no purpose. It serves no purpose in the story at all. So what does serve a purpose is the responsibility. And the only person that has responsibility is you, or is me in this situation. It's me. I have full responsibility over my life, including every single thing that happens and how I respond. So, and actually I'm going to expand on that a little bit, because in a way I believe that we all are responsible for what happens to us, and we have responsibility for how we respond. So I think it's pretty obvious that we have control over how we respond, and I think that a lot of people can agree to that. Now, I would take it a step further and to say that we also have control over what happens to us in most cases. Now, of course, things are going to happen that are out of our control. But I do believe that we attract every situation in our lives. Most of them are subconscious. And so if you're noticing that a lot of bad things are happening to you, I'm really going to challenge you to take responsibility for that. Why are you attracting these situations? It's often a reflection of what's going on the inside. So I just want to plant that seed for you, that if there is a lot of situations where you're being treated really poorly by other people, often, you're having a series of strings of poor quality relationships where people are not treating you right, I want you to look inward and take responsibility for that, about what am I feeling on the inside, what am I doing, how am I being that is attracting these types of relationships and these circumstances into my life, and how am I responding to them? So it's just an experiment that you can start thinking about around that. And since I'm on the topic of relationships, I'm going to continue down that road, because I think relationships are such a vital, key part of life, of course. So as soon as you start taking responsibility for everything in your life, including your relationships, and this will be romantic relationships, non-romantic relationships, work relationships, family, friends, everybody. Whenever there is a conflict in any of these relationships, I want to challenge you to take responsibility. Regardless of what the situation is. Someone may be clearly treating you poorly, and again, how can you take responsibility for that situation? Why are they treating me poorly? That doesn't mean it's my fault, doesn't mean it's their fault. But how am I being in this situation? Am I acting in a way that is allowing other people to treat me poorly? Why am I still in a relationship with somebody who's treating me this way? And why did I attract this person into my life in the first place? It's often because you need to learn this lesson, right? So it's not a bad thing that you attracted this person into your life who is now treating you like shit. It's just something that you needed to learn. And it's up to you if you're going to take the lesson and learn it. That's the exciting part, right? Is that it's up to you. You get to learn this lesson in all of these hard scenarios. You have the opportunity to take this as a gift and use it to grow yourself and self-actualize even further. So again, I've talked about this before, I think on one of my previous episodes, about how relationships are mirrors. They're always a mirror of what's going on the inside. I talked about how I'm treated like a golden butterfly. It's the first thing that I can think of. I'm treated like a golden butterfly by my relationships, and I have been over the last, say, year. And that's because I see myself as a golden butterfly, or I view myself in a very positive way. I love myself. The more I love myself, the more others love me. The more others treat me that way. So notice how you respond when circumstances that are unfavorable to you show up. How are you responding to these situations? And are you using them to learn? Are you reflecting? Okay, I'm feeling this negative emotion. Why? What's going on? Let's dive into that. That's going inward. That's taking responsibility. Or are you a complainer? Are you complaining about whatever it is around you that's going on that you don't like? Complaining is a very low vibrational way of being, and I find myself to be personally very sensitive to complaining. And again, that's my responsibility for what I do with that. If I'm around people who are complaining a lot, what is that saying about me? I'm not always in control necessarily of the situation. Say if I'm working as a tour guide and I'm around a lot of people who are complaining. Of course I've been in that situation plenty of times. Now, it doesn't mean I can choose my guests on tour, but I can choose how I respond to it. I can easily brush it off and not allow it to affect me. That's totally my responsibility. That's my choice. Or I can allow that vibration to pull me down, and I can start complaining about my guests who are complaining. See, that's my responsibility. So it's kind of a fun game, is about how we're responding to situations. It's always a game of responding, experiencing and responding, experiencing, responding. And I just get excited just thinking about it, about what's the next experience that's going to elicit some emotional response in me, or that's going to push me into some level of uncomfortability, and how am I going to respond to that? And I'm not perfect at it. I still complain. I still do. I still see myself as a victim in some areas sometimes. I'm not perfect at all of this stuff. But I am aware. I'm very much more aware than I used to be about how I respond. So I'm going to give you an example from my own life. And it's an example that is, again, I've talked about this on the podcast. And it is the most challenging It's the most challenging circumstance that I've ever experienced. And it's been a lifelong experience. So it's definitely the biggest thing I've had to overcome, and I'm still not overcome. I still have not overcome it. Excuse me. And that is the topic of sex. The topic of sex is something that I've struggled with for my entire life, and I've talked about it more and more, and I'm having these conversations, and I love that I'm having these conversations. I actually love the way I'm responding to these situations for the most part, because I'm still going through this struggle right now with these relationships that I'm having, and with myself when I'm not in any relationship, around sex and enjoying sex and really experiencing sex, experiencing orgasm. Like, these things are not easy for me, and they're very rare actually. Not the occurrence, but not like having sex is rare, or with myself, with any other person. It's the getting to this state of orgasmic pleasure and experiencing the fullness of what sex really is. That is not experienced often, and I have not broken through that barrier, whatever that thing is that is holding me back. I've just been really diving into this over the last year, 2 years-ish, and I still am struggling with it. So why am I bringing this up right now? You guessed it. I am taking full responsibility for this circumstance. And even though I don't know exactly what has caused these problems for me, I can only speculate. Sexual trauma I've had, being raised in a society that shames women for all things related to their vaginas, and a culture that favors men in sex and makes it normal that men get to have their orgasm and do sex the way that they want, and women just are there for the ride and there to pleasure the man. That's my experience with sex, and that is so many women's experience that I've heard from other people. Now, I still am practicing taking responsibility for this, because yes, it is not my fault that I was raised in that environment. It is not the fault of the environment itself, regardless of what was done to me or how I was raised or what happened. That's irrelevant, right? I can't control any of that. It's already happened. What can I control? I can control how I respond, and how I'm responding now is recognizing that if I want to have the sex life that I know is possible, that is on me to create. And it's not going to be necessarily easy, but it is possible because other people are doing it. And so I'm doing it. I'm listening to, I'm doing the theory around it. I'm listening to the podcast. I'm learning, and I've been learning so much over the last few years about what sex really is, or what it really can be, what it's really, the spiritual side of sex. And I'm taking that and I'm actually practicing it, and it's mostly about the consistent practice. So I don't want to get too far into the subject because I've made a whole hour-long episode about it. But the point is I'm taking responsibility for my life, my sexual life, my sexual well-being. because I know that sex actually is such a huge part of life, and I've been learning this a lot, is that yes, I am a very happy person, and imagine how much better it would be when I get through those, when I pass these barriers, because I know what is on the other side of that, or I can only imagine what's on the other side through what I've heard from other people. So the way this shows up in my relationships, this links with the relationships as well, right? Because when I'm having sex with another person, luckily I feel I'm really happy with the level that I'm able to communicate this. I'm very open about this, clearly, because I'm speaking it on my podcast. But when I'm not satisfied, I'm not afraid to say it. Now, in the moment, of course, I'm not going to necessarily say it, but after the fact, when there's a conversation, when I can bring up the conversation later, I feel very open to express these things with my partners. And I have people in my life who are willing to explore these things with me. And again, this would not work for me if I was blaming external circumstances. If I was blaming my partner for not understanding how to please me, or blaming myself for not being able to ask for what I want, or to blaming myself for not knowing what I even want or need in this situation. I'm not blaming anybody. I'm not blaming anything for this. It's just my responsibility to move forward and continue doing the work. I'm just continue doing the work. And it's going to unfold exactly the way it's meant to. And I really believe, again, how I'm responding to this is, yes, okay, some days I cry, some days I get really frustrated because it's such a struggle for me, this area of my life. But I really know that this is a part of my purpose in life. This is a part of my dharma. I really have this feeling deep inside me that this is something that I'm going to help other people overcome as soon as I really break through that. I know that I'm not at the level where I can obviously help other people. Well, okay, I'm going to take that back. I know that just by talking about this, I'm helping somebody. And I know that I can help other people really break through their issues around sex. But I need to do the work myself first. Then I can help other people do the work. So I'm just seeing it as, I'm actually feeling really blessed that I'm going through this, because I'm looking at it as a bigger picture thing. I have big things to do here. I can feel it. And I need to go through the work myself first. So well, actually, this is going to be a short one, because I think I've made my point fairly concise, and there's not a whole lot to it. So I'm actually going to just give you a few notice points that you can just start noticing in your everyday life. Because really, it is actually that simple, that you can take responsibility for everything in your life. And just start noticing, like, where in your life can you start taking responsibility where you were not taking responsibility before? So I really want you to notice your relationships. These are huge, right? Because your relationships take up so much of your life. Relationships are so important, and they can make or break your happiness in a sense. Or they can make or break your quality of life. I think that the happiness is always going to come from within, but your quality of life, I think, is very much influenced by the quality of your relationships. So just notice the next time you're getting in an argument, or the next time you're a little bit triggered by somebody around you in your life, and just before you react, I want you to respond internally first. Respond by asking yourself first, how can I take responsibility for this situation? And just see what happens. There's always a way that you can take responsibility. And even if you are in a situation where you taking responsibility means you need to get this person out of your life now, okay, you have responsibility to do that. So there's so many levels to it. Sometimes taking responsibility means you need to check how you are creating the situation. Maybe it was you that attracted the situation in the first place, or maybe it's your responsibility to move forward and to get this person away from your life. And there's so many other levels to this. But as soon as you take responsibility, it gives you the power. It gives you the power to create the life of your dreams, because it's not up to anybody else. It's up to you. It's 100% your responsibility. I love how many times I've said this word in this episode. Of course, because it's about responsibility. So I want to just drill it in. I know I'm repeating a little bit, but it's like, it's a very simple message that needs to be drilled in a little bit. So I'm going to give you a little assignment, okay? So just to notice in your everyday life. So I talked about the relationships, but look out for some of these other things. Just notice any time where you're feeling any sort of negative emotion. Anytime that you are not getting what you want. Anytime you're feeling unhappy or frustrated or anything negative. I also want you to notice, any challenges in your relationships or challenges at work, any challenge in your life. So these are just some specific things you can look out for that are likely to happen at least on a daily or on a daily basis. Surely you're going to come up with some sort of challenges or some level of frustration or negative emotion. That's just a part of life. And so this is the first step to really changing how you respond to things, and taking responsibility is through just noticing them. Even if you are not ready to take that responsibility yet, you don't feel like of course it's going to take some practice, but just to notice these situations as they come up, it takes you out of moving on autopilot, and it grounds you in that present moment and just noticing what's happening. And sometimes it's as easy as just saying, hey, if it doesn't matter in 5 years, don't spend more than 5 minutes worrying about it. My friend George always talks about that. He says this probably every day. So shout out to him, because I love that saying. And it's a good reminder that I'm literally reminded every day about it when he's around. And sometimes it's a little more complex, and there's some really deep inner work that you need to do around that, like what I'm doing with my sex life. So I am quite excited to actually, I think I might even record a second episode around this subject. It's kind of a subsection, and it's around triggers and how triggers are mirrors in your life. This is also kind of how relationships are mirrors, but as well, triggers are mirrors. And I'm going to talk more about this in another episode, because I think it is a separate thing, but it is related. So I'm excited to record this one for you. Thank you for listening. Probably my shortest episode in quite a long time. Please let me know what you think about it. Make a comment. If you're watching this on YouTube, please comment. Please share and like and subscribe and all the thingies for me, so that I can just continue doing this. I mean, I'm going to continue doing it no matter what, but definitely would love the support. And I want to continue doing this at a bigger scale. So the more you can share this with other people, I would really, really appreciate it. So thank you so much for being here, and I'll see you on the next one.